Hello, and welcome to Season 5 of the Your Neurodiverse Relationship podcast. I'm Jodi, Carlton, your host, and I'm a neurodiverse relationship expert. But like so many of you, I've been on my own journey of discovering and understanding neurodiversity, both in my personal life with my family members and even myself, and professionally as a therapist and now relationship coach to people around the world. I'm often asked, can neurodiverse partner relationships actually work? And the answer is absolutely they can. Just like any relationship, there are core variables that influence whether or not you'll thrive as a couple. Neurodiverse relationships are no different, but they have the added layer of being neurodiverse, where one or both partners is neurodivergent. So this season, I've got a lineup of couples and partners who are in neurodiverse relationships that are working. They get real personal with me about the challenges they have faced and how they've overcome those challenges in their relationships. Let's get started. All right. Adam and Becca, I'm so thrilled that you're going to be on the podcast, on the show today. I've been following you on TikTok. I discovered you a while back and just absolutely love the content where you really help keep people informed about what it's like to be in this neurodiverse relationship of yours. So this podcast series is about neurodiverse relationships can work. So I invited you to be on the show so we could talk a little bit about yours. So let me just let you two introduce yourselves and just tell us, what do you think it would be helpful for our listeners to know?
You want me to go first?
Yes.
Okay. Right. So I'm Adam. I am 40 years old, physical therapist by trade. I do home health, so I go to patients' houses. I'm also an amateur musician. We're sitting in my studio right now. There's guitars and stuff hanging around. I am a massive baseball fan, specifically the Atlanta Braves. I played baseball for a year in college, and I met this wonderful lady. What would that have been? 2010?
That's about right.
Yeah. And the first thing I ever said to her is Lasix a potassium sparing diuretic? And she
No.
thought that was the hottest thing she's ever heard. So we're married now.
Okay.
I have a feeling Becca has a different version of that story.
Yeah.
Well, I needed you to know that it's not. So, yeah, but that
It's
is,
a matter of life and death that I know.
but that was our first conversation, strangely enough.
Yes. I knew she was a nurse at the time. I was
okay.
in school.
Yeah.
And I went to her to ask that question because I was like, wait a minute. Are there some, I was trying to figure something out about potassium levels in the blood. So I went to her and asked that question, and I had no idea. She didn't even know she was neurodivergent at that moment. And so like I was already fun facting with her, and it just went from there.
I knew things were different. Like, I didn't really sit in
Sure. Yeah.
anywhere. Got a lot of
Yeah,
strange
so-
looks.
So Becca, can you tell us a little bit about you then and sort of what that process was like, but just anything else you want to share about yourself as well?
Sure. Like he said, I was working as a nurse for a time. I grew up around here as well. And I was very fond of school because I really loved the routine and how orderly everything was. You get a syllabus and you follow it, and it just makes sense. So I was in school for a long time before figuring out I was going to try to be a nurse, because I was always told, oh, go somewhere in the medical field. That's what you're supposed to do, because it's just the way you're supposed to do. And so I was like, okay, that's what I'm supposed to do. So I went into nursing thinking that, and I ended up getting burnt out pretty quickly within a good year. I was having like just these sort of meltdowns in the bathroom and trying to get through that, feeling guilty about why can't I do this like everybody else can.
And she's a brilliant.
Well, I'm also
like,
I'm kind of a
she's the
perfectionist.
person. Yeah, she's the nurse that you want taking care of you in the hospital. But
What kind of nursing were you doing, Becca?
I was working for the VA at the time. I was working med surge, I guess. So there's a lot of stuff going on in med surge, combination of all kinds of stuff, different patients and things like that. But I mean, we were always short staffed too, which I'm sure made it more difficult, but trying to deal with like more than one. I mean, we were doing like 5 patients at a time, and I like to make sure that each one has exactly what they need in the moments that they need it. And then you have all the extra sounds and smells and lights, fluorescent lights. And after a while, you just can't take it anymore. So I was having these meltdowns. I did go to work for home health, and that was easier, I think, because you're dealing with one patient and their family at a time. And it's kind of as you go. And that was definitely more, I think that was more me than, say, the hospital setting. But then I had my daughter and things got overwhelming again.
That was a different situation. She
So,
came on board with the home health agency I was with at the time.
yeah.
And she ended up riding along with me during her orientation phase.
Yeah.
Oh,
It was the
okay.
cutest. Yeah.
Yeah. But
So you guys
and
already
it,
knew each other at that point.
we
We
did.
were married.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you were already
At
married.
that
Okay.
point,
You knew each
yeah.
other pretty well.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I would get to bring her along with me to the patient's houses for like a day or two. And I got to
Yeah.
introduce her. This is my wife, Rebecca. She's doing
Right.
orientation with us today.
Yeah. And of course, it was hard at first because anything new is going to be kind of hard, but just kind
Yeah.
of getting the hang of all that. I think the hardest thing about that though was probably driving. I hate driving.
Yeah.
And you kind of have
Mhm.
to drive to people's houses. But then, yeah,
And new places a lot of times, places
yeah,
that are foreign and new you've never been before.
yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how, so Adam leads with this medical question
Yeah.
and then how did the two of you end up together?
We actually met going to church, which is kind of funny because I was told that's where I was supposed to go to, right? You're like, oh, you need answers, you go to church. We live in the South, so I was like, okay, that makes
Right.
sense. I didn't really fit in there either, though. Felt kind of, usually when I would say things, I would get funny looks, and a lot of them don't like questions. The place that we went to wasn't a fan of questions. Like
No.
you just don't question what's being said, and that's just something very difficult for me. I like to be able to, I like details. So I ask a lot of questions.
My daughter
Yeah.
had the same experience. I mentioned before we started recording, she's autistic and she had a very similar experience when she was a teenager and was trying to kind of maybe join some youth groups, and she's very inquisitive and had questions, and I know exactly what you're talking about
Yeah.
Yeah.
because she had the same experience. Yeah.
I did get along better with the homeless ministry. Like I had that was because everybody there felt more authentic. Like there wasn't any sort of, you didn't have to put on any sort of face you didn't have to be something or pretend to be something, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah,
it felt like you kind of had to do that elsewhere. And I didn't quite understand that. I've never been good at the whole masking thing.
Yeah, I was going to say the masking.
Well, keeping up
So-
appearances.
Yeah, I've just never been really good at that, even
Yeah.
before knowing. That's probably why I didn't fit in that well. But basically, in my 20s, I spent a good bit of my 20s drinking a lot, really, because like if people invited me out, that was the only way I knew how to relax enough to socialize. And
Yeah.
even then, like, most of my socialization is, hey, did you know? Like, and they're just going off on some weird tangent, I guess. But if everybody's drinking, nobody cares.
They don't care. Yeah.
Like, I always felt like that was the only time I ever fit in, but that became a problem because I didn't want drinking to become like a crutch in my life or any sort of like habit, because like I know in my family there's quite a bit of addiction and stuff like that. I really didn't want to go that route. And so I don't drink a lot anymore, thankfully. But but that was how I think masked in my 20s. And honestly, now I just don't worry about it as much because I finally be able to kind of find the people that like me for who I am. And so, and there may not be many of them, but they're good people.
That circle that we keep is important. And like you said, it doesn't necessarily have to be a lot of people, but the people that we can be who we are, who be ourselves with them is really important.
And it took a while to find those people, but it's worth the wait.
Yeah, I'm still just shocked. I mean, we got together and like our connection was super deep and super strong right from the jump. But even through, learning all these new things and new realities, like our connection with each other has, survived all that. Like it can be really jarring to find out, oh, your brain is literally different. Like that's not, when you find out something like that after the fact, it can be, some couples decide to part ways or, stuff like that. But for us, it's been like, well, I want to be with you and you want to be with me. So we're going to figure this out. Right.
Well, a lot made sense after the fact, I think, too, though.
Yes.
Because I do struggle. I've always struggled with like physical affection, like not wanting to be touched or hugged or comforted.
Yeah.
I really struggle with that. He jokes around about me hating the sun, and I literally can't stand bright lights or the feeling of it on my skin.
We
Um,
pull out of the driveway and she goes, as soon as the sun
Yeah.
hits her part of the car, she goes,
yeah. Well, I'm a sunglass wearer, so, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty OCD when it comes to sunscreen.
she has a
But
physical reaction
yeah,
every time the sun hits her.
yeah,
Hey, I'm with you on that, Becca.
not
I
not a
can't deal
fan.
with
Yeah.
I had an argument with somebody one time about the winter sun because I'm like, oh, the winter sun's so bad. And they're like, it's the same sun. I'm like, no, it's
It feels
so,
brighter. Yeah,
it is. It's
It's like the
harsher.
colder the atmosphere, the brighter it
Mhm.
comes in because there's nothing there. The atmosphere is clearer, but
Yes.
I
But
know
yeah.
I'm sensitive to it too. So I'm with you on that.
but then I would
so
get overwhelmed easy too, and I would just sort of lose it and have to come be
Yeah.
by myself. And so all that started
Yeah.
making sense. to me.
yeah. So for you, it was kind of like a light bulb. Oh, and then Adam,
Yeah.
what was it like for you? Because these things were there, you were experiencing them as a husband, but not really knowing what it was and why. And so what was that like for you to have that? Oh,
It was a real breakthrough to finally
Mhm.
learn, oh, this has a name. This is like it's a diagnosis, a collection of symptoms, and then you can, map out a path from there, which, we know this from our work. Like when I talk to patients and they've been through, primary doctor and one or two or three specialists and they don't know what's happening. When they finally land with that doctor that's like, oh, you have restless leg syndrome. That's why you haven't slept in 6 months.
mm-hmm.
Then they get medicated and it changes their world. They feel like a person again. That's kind of what it was like. It's like, oh gosh, okay. Because the more that she told me about what autism is, how it presents and all that stuff, I'm like, my goodness, babe, that's a dead ringer. Like you're checking every box. And
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it was suggested by a therapist I was seeing at the time.
yes, and it gave a place to, all the times in the past where she was actually experiencing sensory overwhelm.
Yeah.
But of course, we don't know what's going on, and so you know, I'm, it's completely absurd that she can be touched out at the end of the
Oh,
day,
yeah.
or
Mm-hmm.
it's just, she can reach sensory overwhelm. And the
Mhm.
best thing for me to do is to not touch her, to just leave her in the bedroom, sitting on her bed.
Watching the labyrinth.
It's like her charging station. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Couple
I
bed is
like
her,
that. The
shows.
charging station. Yeah.
exactly. And so what's kind of absurd about us getting together is that she only has, so much bandwidth to accept sensory input. I am a toucher. Like it is
Mm.
how I receive
Mhm.
love and it's how I give it. And so when that would come up, it would be extremely painful for me, extremely. And but
And you didn't know
again,
how to
we
make
didn't
sense
know.
of it.
No, didn't know how to make sense of it at all. I'm just like, and Becca's degree of neurodivergence, like how much bandwidth it takes up for her, it allowed her, when we were married before we had our daughter, she
Mhm.
had enough bandwidth mostly to handle, everything that came along with that particular situation. As
Right.
soon as you add a child, a newborn baby, into this situation, her mask flew off and
Yeah.
she all of a sudden had no bandwidth. And there was none of this, she's not thinking, I feel like I'm, depriving Adam of X, Y, and Z, or he really feels alone and isolated. She's just trying to survive. Like
Yeah.
her hair is on fire every day.
Yeah.
But that's what it was. It was a real breakthrough to learn what was going on.
And there's guilt too, though. Like I feel like, because I do feel
Intrusive guilt is part of.
It's big, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know, like the older I get, the more I realize that other people, not that I didn't know other people had needs, but like I understand. Like when I was younger, I had the hardest time comforting friends when I would know that they were upset because they were crying, but I would have no idea what to do in that moment. I would just sort of sit there and like feel completely awkward, completely just unprepared for that situation. And like now I know, like I have like sort of physical scripts in my head where it's like, okay, I know this person well enough to know that they do like hugs. They want a hug in this situation. Like, okay, initiate hug, right? Like it's just sort of I've learned how to sort of do that now.
That's right. She's manually building the script.
But before,
Yeah.
it was very difficult for me I never really was able to recognize my own emotions very much.
Yes.
I still have trouble with that. Like I know I'll be feeling anxious or it feels like anxiety, but it's not anxiety. What is this? Why am I feeling this way? So, and I work with my therapist on that, but obviously I can tell if someone's crying, they're upset about something. I'll just sit here and wait and see what I need to do because I don't know what to do.
I have kind of a funny for our family story about what you just shared. So my daughter is the same. She doesn't know what to do sometimes, and she nervous laughs sometimes. And she said she's always just been terrified of certain situations where she's afraid she would nervous laugh, and like she was terrified when they brought the drug dogs to school because she's like, I'm gonna start laughing and look guilty, and she doesn't know what to do when people are crying. And in our family, she was diagnosed when she was 5, so we've known for a long time, and we've been able to build it into our conversations and understanding. But her brother is 18, my youngest, and we took him off to college in Mississippi in August. And so my daughter and I were driving away in the same car together, just the two of us. And I had that moment of, I was just overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, I'm
Oh,
driving
no.
away, leaving
Yeah.
my son. And so I start ugly crying, and I'm just like, can barely speak. And I knew her, and I knew that this was really uncomfortable for her, but I couldn't manage it. And so I'm just ugly crying. And then about 10 seconds into it, she just blurts out, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And then we both just started laughing. It really kind of was exactly what I needed,
Yeah.
to sort of
Yes.
break the moment, because I understood that she wanted to help me, but she had no idea what to do.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I
That is
use
so
yeah.
sweet.
I use humor like that too. I was actually at a funeral this past week, and I felt bad because like I usually don't cry, and when I do, it sneaks up on me, and I never
Mhm.
know when it's going to
Mhm.
happen, but it's pretty rare. And like everybody at this funeral is like they're crying and stuff, and I cared about this person a lot. It was my uncle, but like crying, it just isn't something that.
Mhm.
And so I always feel like, oh gosh, what if I don't cry? People think that I'm insensitive, or
Yes.
because
Yeah.
this is what you're supposed to be doing and I'm not doing it. The same thing with like our wedding when we were married,
Yes. And I
like
helped
there
you a
was so
ton.
much emotion
Yes.
in the room, and I'm over here thinking, please don't trip, please don't trip, please don't trip, because everybody's watching me
Yes.
come down this aisle. It's the most uncomfortable thing ever.
Mhm.
And of course, I
Should
help
be
her.
perceived.
Yeah.
Yes. Center
Yes.
of attention. And of course,
Mhm.
I help her maximally by ugly crying the entire way
Yeah.
she's walking down the aisle. I had no idea that
I
was
mean, we're complete opposites basically. And he had so many friends at the time. All these people were there. I didn't even know who they were.
Oh.
And these people, like, they all like went to this same like church or surrounding with us. And I feel like where we were at the time, a lot of them, there was no real understanding of any kind of mental health, like anxiety or anything like that. Like at least in
Mhm.
this particular place. And hopefully that changes with time. But so if I were to say, explain how I'm feeling, it would probably get sort of construed as, oh, you need some inner healing or something. I don't know, something that like there's
spiritual
something wrong
cause
with
for
me.
your mental health issues.
So
Blah, blah, blah.
I always felt like, oh, if they can see me, they know something's wrong with me. They're looking at me. Why they're looking at me? They can tell what I'm thinking, can't they? Like it was just a constant, yeah,
Dialogue in your or monologue in your head. Yeah. I want to circle back to what you were saying about when you had your daughter, because this is something I see a lot with the couples that I work with. A lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. Because like you both said, what was manageable for you, Becca, up till that point, then bringing a newborn baby into the household, that with the smells and the sounds and the sleep deprivation and all of the senses are overloaded for anybody, much less someone who's autistic. And I hear a lot of times this is where couples really hit a pretty major hurdle in their marriage and their relationship, because especially if they don't know about autism or neurodiversity. So it sounds like this very much happened to you guys. When was it? At what point did you actually realize or learn about the autism?
It was probably a few years after that, but I was really struggling at the same time that
Oh, she was 7 years old
yeah, because
by the time
Oh,
Becca
wow.
had that
Okay.
therapist suggest.
Okay.
Mhm.
yeah, well, yeah, and I hadn't been seeing anyone up until that point. I basically let myself run dry until I was like, I can't do anything. I don't even know what to do.
Yeah.
Uh,
And there's
but
to be fair, like because of the context that I was raised in and the context that we met in, I used to be a pastor. I helped start a church that's still going today. And the cult, unfortunately, is an extremely toxic church, extremely
Mhm.
toxic culture that I come from.
Yeah.
And like one of the big transition moments was me leaving all that behind, to be honest. I had to do it for the sake of my own mental health, my own intellectual integrity. That was a huge deal for her because now I could actually become a person who could see her and say, oh, I understand. I now have permission to understand where you actually are as a person, as a wife, and as a mother. And so she had our child in the middle of that extremely toxic, situation. There's no room to say, oh, I'm burnt out. Oh, I'm
We also moved
sensory. We did
at the
move.
same time. So
Oh, wow.
I was
Huge.
not in a great place. And I actually stopped going quite a bit to said church before, because like it was really weird in the moment because I'd had her, and right after that I was like, I am tired. I'm going to rest and try to figure out what's going on here because this is all new to me. And I remember like being kind of shamed by a few people, like, why aren't you back in church? I was back the week after, and I was like, well, I'm not going to be there for a while. Like I had started getting much moodier. Everything I was saying was like right out of my head. There was no filter left. I was just, by the time she was 7, I think I had just reached burnout, to be honest, because I was exhausted. I think I was telling him every day, he'd be like, how you doing? I'm like, I'm tired, just tired.
I'd call her on the way home from work, and
I've got nothing. Like,
constantly in burnout. I didn't know how to describe it then, but I was like,
yeah.
you are not okay.
And depressed. I was really, and like I loved
Which had
my
led to depression, I'm sure, the burnout. Yeah.
100%.
And I loved my daughter, but like I was terrified that like she was going to end up like me at one point. I was like, oh, what if she has to deal with all this when she gets older? Like, what if she has to deal with it? Because I already knew I had dealt with anxiety, because I had dealt with anxiety since childhood. I did see someone early on who put me on medication for social anxiety. They hadn't like done any kind of actual testing or anything like that. They just were like, oh, well, it sounds like, you don't like going places or being around people. Here, take this medication. Maybe it'll help.
Yeah.
And, it did help with some of the anxiety. Actually, I had pretty bad health anxiety, and it helped with that. But, a lot of the anxiety still sticks around because it's not just your typical anxiety. It's coming from
the neurodivergent brain is a more anxious brain anyway, because it's a hypervigilant brain because of all the sensory assault is just going to keep that limbic system activated all the time. So it is a really different kind of anxiety. Are you guys familiar with Dan and Stephanie Holmes? Do you know who they are?
No.
I think it'd be great for you to connect with them. They're also going to be on one of the episodes here, but they have their own First Christian Marriage platform. But we have talked a good bit, because I come from Georgia too, and I come from Southern Baptist roots. My dad was a Southern Baptist preacher. So I know about the toxicity you're talking about. And so Stephanie and Dan are both ministers, but not in a denominational type ministers. And we have had some really good conversations about spiritual abuse and the toxicity in the church. And they're just very fascinating people. And they're very much about speaking out against some of that stuff that you were just mentioning that's so toxic. So anyway, just Stephanie, Dan Holmes, if you're interested, look them up. They're in Georgia as well. But so you guys managed to survive all that. And you're telling me that you're polar opposites, which opposites do attract in this world, and especially in this neurodivergent world. I see people being very much pulled, attracted to each other, like you mentioned, that strong connection in the beginning. And it's really great when you're able to embrace those differences and use them as strengths as a couple. But it can also be very divisive. It can divide couples, because especially when things get overwhelming and there's not a framework for understanding what is happening here. So talk me through how you guys managed to survive all that and then get to where you are now.
I'm sure in the beginning there were a lot of miscommunications. Like, we came from very different families. Like, my mom, I suspect that she has some neurodivergence as well, but she comes from kind of this generation that's like, oh, I don't have that stuff. Like, that's what she calls it. But
that's that stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
But there's a lot going on there. But like, it was always me and her kind of growing up, and like we didn't really do a whole lot with other people. We were, feelings weren't necessarily a thing we talked about or dealt with much. And we loved our alone time. Like, we each have our kind of thing. I'd come home, put my headphones in, pace back and forth in my room. That was my that's how I would
Associate.
like get out of my head after school and stuff. But I'm still very much the same way. Like just the other night I had my headphones in, pacing back and forth in our bedroom. So like I feel like he is really good about letting me have that time and that space to decompress instead of like pushing and pushing and pushing. Like, especially if we do have a miscommunication, I just need time to, breathe and just sort of be alone and figure things out. I'm not into being comforted right then, or I need to like get it out. I need to process it in my own head by myself. And, but he listens, like actually listens, which is a big deal to me, I feel like. And I didn't know that would be a big deal to me until I guess after we met, because I wasn't looking for a relationship or anything like that when we met. I'm totally fine not being with anybody. But like, and like if I would have said that back then, that probably would have offended him. But like, I think he understands what I mean now.
Like, I don't care. You want to go out?
Like, I feel like he understands now what I mean, because it's like, I still want to be with you, but like, that's kind of a bigger deal now when you think about it, because it's like, I'd usually choose not to be around much of anybody.
Right. Having access to her life, period, it's a big deal.
But I want to just emphasize that, because I think that's an important message for a lot of people to hear, especially the non-autistic partners, because so many are looking for that connection in the way, like you were talking about physical touch, Adam, being part of your love language, if you will, we'll call it that, the way you give and receive love. And because Becca's not, it can really feel like, well, I'm not loved, I'm not being loved. And there's all sorts of other expectations we have about what a relationship looks like, what it's supposed to be, all those shoulds. And when they're not there, for us to be able to recognize, hey, for my partner, my autistic partner, to actually choose to be here is a huge effort. I'm telling people the effort matters. The effort, the choice, it matters. And so that, I've got a video that's, one of the things, how do you know if your autistic person or someone in your life loves you? It's like, well, if they say they love you and they're showing up in your life, chances are they do love you, because that's a lot of work. It's a lot of effort. So I just wanted to stop and emphasize that.
That's right. The autistic people, they say what they mean. And they mean what they say. If they tell you they love you, that's 100% the truth.
I'm sure I've said things in the past too that were very blunt, that I didn't realize were very blunt. Because I know we've definitely had some, arguments over things, and I can't think of a specific example right now, but I would say something, he would just immediately get defensive. And I was like, what? I'm just saying.
She makes this joke. Okay, so her mother's first name is Sandra, and she jokes that her mom puts the Sandra in Miss Sandrast.
Well, my mom, my mom is not.
I couldn't tell. There was so many times I could not tell. Rebecca, do you hate all men, including me? I have no data besides the fact that we live in the same house. I'm usually just parenting
my mother, but my mother, well, if you look at some of the men in my family, though, right, there is every reason for her not to trust too many men, including my dad. Yeah,
which is even more of an honor to you, Adam.
It really is, because she's, again, Becca does not need anyone else. She's a fully actualized, again, the contrast is so absurd. I've been in church since before I was born. That's literally true.
Yeah.
And in that world, women don't act like her. They don't think like her. They don't, nothing like, they don't have pink hair. Are you kidding? And so everything about her it's a foil. It's not just the opposite. It's like it flies in the face of everything that I should be, that I was raised to be, quote unquote.
But they don't know it, potassium sparing diuretics.
So Adam, so what drew you to Becca? I mean, she was kind of, did you see some of those differences in her then even?
It's funny because I used to run and hide. I used to go and I would literally go up to the playground up from the church to get away from things in between. Yeah. So I tried to stay away from people. I was just I'm just here. Please don't, I don't need all the small talk or the, how are you? I'm not into that.
So I was just drawn to her, just her general disposition, just her way of speaking, her gentleness, her kindness, just the way that she talks, the way that she deals with the world around her. It was just so attractive to me.
Most people don't like my disposition because they say I never smile.
Well, I wouldn't even, I don't even remember thinking, oh, she doesn't smile much. I was never, I don't know. I was just so into her.
Yeah.
But our first date lasted 6 hours. We just
Oh,
talked and
wow.
talked and
Yeah.
talked. And
Yeah.
we seemed to be so at home with each other right from the jump. And it was, you know, she's just, she's so kind and considerate. She's so
Mhm.
aware of
Mhm.
what's going on in the room with other people, every room with people that she doesn't want to be in. She's always aware of what's going on with that.
Where's the exit?
Yes.
Yeah.
How long till we can leave? Her intelligence, she's nobody's fool. She is not easy to manipulate. She's basically immune to groupthink.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's so wild because when we met, I was me, but my identity was also intertwined with religious fundamentalism,
Mhm.
which is extremely
So
toxic.
you were very involved in the group think, whereas she's
I was
somewhat
the
immune to
ringleader.
it. Yeah.
I was the
Yeah.
ringleader. I was helping it succeed.
I was basically
Yeah.
walking around outside of it, peering
Yeah.
in every so often.
So is she
But
like a beacon, like a beacon of light for you?
yes. Yes, she was. She was just 100% genuine. My parents met her before I did.
And I'm pretty sure they think I'm a bad influence.
Notwithstanding. My parents met her before I did because my parents were deeply involved with the homeless and poor ministry that she mentioned before.
Right.
They met
Right.
her and they loved her. They loved her. They thought she
Mhm.
was the cat's meow.
Okay.
And,
I still don't get that.
The
well,
cat's
they
meow.
saw that. Yeah. Well, no. They don't get you. What do you mean you don't get what?
At your parents, like,
Right. So,
Ah.
but they just saw how diligent she was, how much she cared for people, how great she was in a group situation where we're serving, helping people, get clothes, get food,
Mhm. Mhm.
taking care of children who, don't have shoes, all that fun stuff.
Mhm.
So, all those things just rolled in when I was like, I caught feelings pretty fast. And there was one, she invited me over to her house and she made dinner for me. And like when she came to the door that one night, I still remember what she was wearing. And I was just like, oh no, I have it really bad for this girl.
and she
So,
still didn't eat the asparagus.
oh, I did too.
You did not.
I did too.
You did.
I ate it that night, but never again. I ate it that night because I wanted to, I didn't want to disrespect your effort.
Funny how you remember it differently.
No, I ate it that night.
You told me you didn't like it though.
I know, but I ate it because I was like, you made this for him. Can I eat this? We should have worked that out before we got on the call.
Fun
No,
fact,
I love it. This is great. This is
Fun-
great.
Fun fact though, asparagus can make your pee smell funny.
Yes, it can. That's right. That's right.
There's your clip for TikTok right there.
There's the fun fact right there. Well, okay. Speaking of TikTok, I want to make sure people know how to. I want to make because that's how I found you, and I know you're on YouTube as well. So I'm going to put that in the show notes. But go ahead and tell everybody how to find you on YouTube and TikTok.
TikTok is Studies Show.
Mm-hmm.
YouTube is actually, is it my name on YouTube? I have to.
Which is your platform that
I don't ever
is
get on
TikTok your
YouTube.
main platform?
Yeah, TikTok would be the main one. It's my name, Adam James, on YouTube. We're also on Instagram as Studies Show Music because I started the account originally.
That's right. You're a musician. Yeah.
I started doing short form content originally to promote the music I was putting out.
Yeah.
We randomly had that one video. It's up to like 33 million views now. And all of a sudden we were making content for the neurodivergent crowd.
Well, I'm glad it's on his account too, though, because like the numbers tend to freak me out, and I just get overwhelmed with like notifications and stuff.
Oh, right. So, yeah.
I handle all the practical aspects of all of our content, so that she doesn't feel perceived by everything.
I do some stuff for the podcast because that's like it's involving that interest that I really like, but
yes.
Other than that.
And you guys, I mean, like I said, I discovered you there, and it's my private account, so you wouldn't even recognize who I am on there. But I love what you guys do there and how you share about your differences. And, we're talking today about being polar opposites. And so this is something I specifically wanted to ask you about today. I know, Adam, your personality, you're jovial, you laugh, and Becca, you're kind of even Steven, and people get really mad at you in the comments, Adam, for laughing so much. And so I wanted
glad you're asking this.
Yeah, so let's talk about it. So
that's actually one of the things I really like about him, though, because humor really helps me with anxiety. It's a very good coping mechanism for me. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes when I'm venting, and you may not be able to tell it, I'm venting, but I kind of want him to laugh to help me. I do. Like I and sometimes I use a specific tone simply because like I really need something funny right now because I'm feeling very anxious. And that's something I don't think I realized until kind of recently, because like I do have a kind of a dark sense of humor where I mix the anxiety with humor. Okay, a lot. But like, and at first you didn't understand that, I think.
I did not.
For a long time. But like sarcasm, dark humor, that's just been a way that I've sort of coped with anxiety and such, and depression and such. But like that's just really helpful for me to know that. And also like, I don't know why, but I always feel like I'm in trouble, like I'm doing something wrong. And maybe that stems from I don't know how to do this whole social thing. And so when someone laughs, I'm like, okay, no one's mad at me. So like, it may come off differently on like to someone else when they're watching the video, like, oh, he's laughing at her. But
yeah,
to me, it really feels like it's actually kind of comforting to me to know that if he's laughing, I'm okay. If he's laughing, I can laugh. It's okay.
Okay, that's a wrap for part 1 of my chat with Adam and Becca. And as you can see, they are so relatable. And I know that many of you are resonating with what they're sharing. They have impacted so many lives, hundreds of thousands of lives on TikTok and YouTube. So be sure to tune in to hear part 2 of my chat with them. You're not going to want to miss it. That's a wrap for today's episode. Be sure to subscribe or follow the podcast so you won't miss any of these amazing interviews. And as always, if you're benefiting and enjoying this podcast, please give us a review. It really helps other people know that this podcast is really beneficial and worth listening to. Thanks for watching on YouTube or tuning in to your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to visit me online at jodicarlton.com for more resources. I have assessment quizzes, educational articles, courses, and more. And if you have any questions, just reach out to my team at gethelp@jodicarlton.com. Until next time.